I would now like to call on Ononuju Irukwu.
All right, thank you very much, Jesusa and Kede. Thank you for the invitation to speak this evening. I really do appreciate it. I'd like to first of all just give us a brief caveat that these are, the course of my conversation today are my opinion and don't represent the opinion or the thoughts of First Bank or FBN Bank UK. This is not a solicitation, and it's really just an expression of my thoughts in my personal capacity as Ononuju Irukwu and a financial services professional. All right, thank you. Now that I've got that out of the way. So thanks also, Greg. You did a lot of good work with the data and the statistics, so I don't need to go through all of that again. I do apologize, I don't have slides that I'll be sharing, but I'll try and make this as engaging as possible so you get the depth of my conversation. So really, I agree with Greg that there's really no way to capture the full capacity of diaspora remittances. Because I mean, if I ask either one of you here, when you do Western Union or MoneyGram, when you could do it and get Naira in the bank account, where that question pops up, what's the source of this fund and what is it for? And if you're like me, you just take whatever and you move on. That really is meant to be the basis for collating data so they can better analyze where the funds are coming from. Is it coming from your income or is it coming from your savings, and exactly what the funds are being used for. But we never provide that information in an accurate form. So it's difficult to really analyze and say this is where the money is coming from or the money is going. However, I mean, if we take it from what we've seen from the World Bank, from PwC, and from a lot of other, even Nairametrics, from a lot of all of these platforms, you find that Nigeria, always comes up as the country that receives the most inflows. Okay, even though the World Bank has said they expect, or well, they did, yes, it did say that 2020 would have the lowest levels because of COVID, but PwC in its own article has said that they expect that by 2023, we should be close to $34 billion in remittances from the diaspora. So which tells me that COVID or no COVID, it remains a pipe that will keep running, no matter what it is. Yes, people have been impacted. Yes, people who've lost jobs, etc. But I also would dare say that when there's an urgent need back home, we will always find a way to send some money. We all rise up to that occasion because we're dealing with needs on an emotional basis rather than a logical or a basis that's rational. Let me put it that way. If your family member is in need, you will find money to send to them. Now, I thought to look at where the funds come from, really. What countries really send funds home? And it's people in diaspora in the UK and America. That accounts for well over 50% of all of the remittances. And I'm talking globally to Africa. And those two countries, and Europe, if you add Europe, have been at the forefront of the COVID-19 pandemic. So it's to be expected that there would be a huge impact on our ability to send funds home and to fund some of the transactions that we have going back home. But interestingly, and this is from my own personal experience, I try to spool exactly what we fund with our remittances. And you would be amazed to find that over 30% goes into what we call family support. We're sending money home for someone, almost like a monthly stipend or something. What takes up next is what we call projects. Some people decide we want to buy a house there, or want to build a house, not buy, you want to build a house in your hometown, or you want to build a house in the city if you decide. But those two things take up well over 38% of the use of the funds that are from remittances from diaspora. The rest of it is things like medical bills, education, you want to pay school fees for someone who can afford it, etc. And then others would be to buy uniform. Let me use the generic word, uniform for a wedding, to sponsor a wedding, and it falls into others. But you know, when I looked at this pie chart and I saw that over 58% is on, I would use the word consumables. You know, we're either paying bills or we're subsidizing a lifestyle. There's no investment in all of this. There's none in the, there's no part in this pie chart that tells me that 10, 15, 20% is going into investments. Maybe, as Greg has said, we're not analyzing the data properly or the input to be able to get this, but just from the top of it, there's nothing there. And so it tells me that there is a huge opportunity for us as people in the diaspora to change the pattern and to change the structure of what our remittances are being used for. Okay, now let me share very quickly. I was going to share it last, but I'll share it later on, because I've spent a bit of time looking at remittances and exactly how it affects the receiving countries or the people back home. And a few years ago, I did a very small paper on the Ethiopian dam. I don't know if anyone is familiar with it. It used to be called the Millennium Dam, but I think it's now called the Renaissance Dam. And there's been a lot of controversy around it because Egypt has opposed it, etc. But at the time the idea was conceived, and this is the crux of my thoughts. At the time it was conceived, what was said was Ethiopia said they were not going to rely on any foreign institution or bank to fund the building of it. And they said they would raise funds internally and from their citizens in the diaspora. Very ambitious, I know, because the total cost of the dam was, I don't know, in excess of 3 billion. Or no, sorry, in excess of about 7 or 8 billion. And I don't think they had that kind of money then. But they had an ambitious desire to raise funds from themselves rather than going to get assistance from the World Bank or any of the other banks. And the reason they did this was they didn't want Egypt to influence or use their leverage to stop the flow of funds, which would then stop the building of the dam. And this got me thinking that our remittances can actually drive, Mr. Professor Kome talked about infrastructure and all of that. Our remittances can actually drive infrastructure development back home in Nigeria. Of course, I will always pivot a conversation to deal with investments and what are you doing with your money. That's the way that I see everything, black, white, and maybe a bit of gray. But the truth is, rather than only supporting payment of bills and payment of family support or school fees, we should also now be thinking about what else can our funds be used to do. A few years ago, maybe about 2018, I know that the treasury bill rate was really good. And so there was quite a lot of interest and investments in treasury bills in Nigeria. That ended sometime between 2019 and 2020, but the rates are beginning to pick up now. Now, the treasury bills is the government's way. I don't need to go into that big economic text, but it's the way the government borrows from its citizens to fund capital expenditures or to fund infrastructure and all of that. Now, what is interesting to me is, even though we have the capacity out here, we don't seek professional advice, you know, when it comes to moving funds. I dare say if we did a poll now and I asked if you built a house in the last 10 years, I'm sure most of us here would have done it. I can't remember the term now, but you'd have done it with a family member or a friend, direct labor or something. If I asked you if you had done an investment, you definitely would have done it through what your friend told you, your sister, your brother. We need to begin to imbibe the culture of seeking professional advice, because that helps us to channel our funds into the right pipes or the right silos that can then begin to develop infrastructure in there. So one of the things that I've said is we have to begin to invest in sector funds, you know, healthcare. In Nigeria now, I think there's a bit of private equity investments chasing after healthcare. I know there's a hospital that was just launched, and I can't remember the name now, but there are attempts to improve the healthcare system. Yeah, agreed, we can't do everything and it's not going to change overnight, but then we can start with our little bit and begin to think how we can influence a change in the general ecosystem around healthcare. How about education? it's interesting that concurrently with this program, there's another program running. I shared it with Asosa yesterday, that's talking about nation building and the place of diaspora in nation building. And they're looking at healthcare, education, financial services, all of the sectors, because we do feel that there is a huge impact that can be garnered from there should be that there's a huge impact that can be garnered from people out in the diaspora. Infrastructure funds, there are infrastructure funds in existence within Nigeria that can help to drive either power projects, road projects, and solar energy. All of that, there are infrastructure funds, and we can begin to look at these and see how we can channel our funds in. You may say to me, but these are billion-dollar funds. Every little drop makes a difference, and we have to begin to channel our thoughts into that. Again, I say talk to professionals. It's really, really very important. Professionals do exist, maybe not in the level and as regulated as we see out in the Western world, but we do have professionals. They're fund managers, they're asset managers, they're investment professionals, there are bankers, they're personal bankers, they're private bankers, they're commercial bankers, all of it. And we can gain from their insights and their guidance to be sure where we put our funds, so it gives us the maximum use. I will round off with very quickly with two stories, if you would permit me, or maybe just one. And so we had a client once who retired as an engineer, I want to think, in the US. And he felt that after he retired, it would be nice to come live in Nigeria. But he hadn't been to Nigeria in years, but he had a family member. And so he was sending money. And I'm sure that money would maybe fit into family support or projects, maybe into projects, okay? And they said they were building a house for him in Lekki. And, okay, and they said they were building a house for him in Lekki. And maybe after about 5 years, he decided to visit Nigeria. And he was a client of the bank I worked with then. And when he came in, they took him to a little bungalow somewhere. I don't know if anyone is familiar with Lagos, but even if not, between Lagos, on the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway, there was one area that was either Irukwu or something, or Mowe, around that area. Yeah, and they took him to a little bungalow there, and you know how those bungalows are built, no foundation, etc. And needless to say, the guy ended up in hospital and sent for us for help, you know. But he had believed in the structure that he thought would work for him. What am I saying with all of this? It's really critical for us to understand that what we earn and what we send back home plays a huge role and a huge part in ensuring that our ecosystem within our country develops. Now, what then happens when we're able to influence this or invest in funds that help us to build better infrastructures is that the people, just like Greg did mention, it's like the people who then rely on you for family support do not have to rely on you. If we had working hospitals, if we had good educational systems, if we had a proper structure, health insurance that everyone could partake of, if we had a pension scheme that paid out pensions regularly and really, really delivered on the annuity schemes that they talked about, then we wouldn't have so many people, or we wouldn't have such a huge family support pipe that we needed to feed. But if all we do is keep throwing money at the problem without actually sitting to think that how can I contribute positively, then we will keep moving and we will hit this 34 billion that and even go more. Yes, $34 billion is what PwC has said remittances to Nigeria will grow to by 2023. But then we will hit that and even exceed it because there's really no structure around it. What do we need to address? The way that things are, the way that data is collected, to the very informal ways that money is transmitted. Maybe the funds that don't pass through Western Union or don't pass through the formal channels are funds that are channeled into investments. We have no real way of collating it. Yes, there's information around foreign direct investment and investments from private equity companies out here in the Western world, but we don't have what we are remitting as people in the diaspora. And finally, I think I would close with maybe just a little thought around the fact that remittances do remain a vital part Oh, I'm sorry. The chats are coming in and I'm reading them. Sorry. So remittances do remain a vital part of as a source of income for developing countries, and I don't see that tap, being turned off. I don't think COVID will impact it in a way that it would be, um, it would get down to the levels of below what we saw in 2020. And I do believe the PwC reports that it's just going to increase a whole lot more and get to at least 30 billion in the next couple of years.